Taplin. I grew up in this town, but left for 50 years. So I'm a little older than I was. So, but I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad to be working with the Historical Society here. We're having a great time. It was started, and I think some of you were present. There were 3 people here. There are 3 people still involved in the Historical Society that were present when Suzanne founded it in February of 2002. I think good for you. Now, I may say that maybe before. Nancy, were you involved when it first started?
Me? No.
Yeah. Okay. So, Mariam, Tim Farmer, and John Sales, we're all, can you hear me?
Yes, better.
Better? Okay, we're all part of the original Historical Society. But, so, I wanted to welcome you all. If you're not a member, you can join anytime. And if you're here and you haven't signed the book, we'd sure like to know you were here, so sign the book on your way out. There's a guest book there at the door. We wanted to start by acknowledging there's a lot of people that make the Historical Society work. And first among them are all the volunteers who worked on this new space. So if you know, I hope you're noticing that we are in a wonderful new space. Though COVID was here, we didn't stop. Lots of things happened. And John Sales led a team of volunteers. Many people, and I'll read their names here in a second, just so that you know how many there were and who they were, helped really refurbish this whole section of the Catholic school so that we can have space for the Heritage Center. And we'll break up in a little while, and you'll be able to visit some of the area that's still in development. This will be the area for presentations and for discussion, so we're using it. It's the way it's going to be. Nancy and Paul Caffo, Art and Peggy Carr, Marilyn and Nick Coy, Kathy and Barry Carrick, Jennifer Garden, Norm Manzer, Gary Minigan, Helen and Bruce Nelson, Mike Snowden, Kim Farmer for membership processing, Up Valley Electric. There's a contractor who gave us an amazing reduction, and I don't know the name of the contractor. I feel bad about that, but we'll figure it out. Jeff Wyman was a contractor who gave us a great deal to do the work. We have some donated items, a vintage organ by Bonnie and John Thureen, it's right over there. A table, Vicki and Carrie Gott gave us the table, so we have plenty of room for cookies. Christopher Olivier did a lot of work on software and computers. And lending items, the Catholic Church gave us all the chairs you're sitting in right now to use. The John Sales led that team, and I think did a great job of managing, overseeing it, and making it all happen. So I think you'll be excited about the space we're in, and I think having space means we can really move forward and start to put things out in the public. All we just need is a chance for the public to come in, and hopefully we're making that progress. So current board members, I'm the president. Kathleen Cooling is the vice president. Kathleen, okay. Nancy Capel is the secretary. Nancy in the back. John Sales is the treasurer. Helen Nelson is collections. Kathleen Carrick, Lindsay Campbell, and Skip Lane. Make it all happen. So thank you all to all of them. We also have picked an executive director, Letty Olivier, who's here. And we have a senior research director who's really been a part of the Historical Society and actually earns us money and works hard. And that's Mariam Hansen, and you're going to hear more from her later on today. So great thanks to Mariam. I think the things that we've done in the last year or two while we've been under COVID, I think are quite impressive. And it's because of all those volunteers we talked about. We have the space, we hired the executive director. We secured some Native American artifacts from the local dig that was done in the near the river. And when they expanded the river, we were able to secure those artifacts. We secured a grant for $5,000 from the city of St. Helena to help us buy equipment and be able to do presentations. And we have, I think, a very exciting forum plan that Kathleen is going to pass out, I think. or pass you on the table?
I'm not going to pass out.
She's not going to pass it out. Are you going to pass it out?
There are a list of our entire speaker schedule for the rest of the year for the luncheon convention.
Okay. Is it about once a month, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it'll be once a month for the rest of the year. It looks like an exciting lineup. And be sure to get the list as you go out the door. I think the big issues, the big challenges that we're facing are funding, generating more money. And so we need to be thinking about how to do that. And we certainly want to do that in part by doing more presentations and being more active now that COVID is seemingly half what we can do that. Of course, we can also take any checks. Curation is another issue. We now have artifacts and we have a space, so we really need to think about how we get that curated in a professional way, in an educational way. So that's really moving the top priorities in terms of what we need to do, who we find to help us do that. Membership, I think we can expand, and we're looking forward to expanding now that we have a space and we are a real entity. Really hand it to the volunteers and the people who pushed this so hard for these last 18 years until we finally have a space. So I think now we are looking forward to expanding the membership. We also have room on the board for more people. And if you're interested, contact me or contact anyone on the board. Contact Letty especially. And we would love to consider you. There's an application form, and we're looking for some specific talents, but we are open to interested and committed people. So welcome to the board if you'd like to come. I will now turn to Kathleen, who's going to introduce the real program. Unless there's any discussion, any questions about anything that's happened or what's happening before we go to the program?
Steve,
Yes.
I'd just like to say that really Jennifer Garden has been our curator and probably will take over in that role. I'm very happy with that role.
I don't know if I have to make an application.
Yeah. Well,
Show my credentials.
it's really exciting that you would think about it, and so we're happy to accept your application and we'll give it a careful reading.
A lot of scrutiny.
Yeah, last competition. Okay. Anything else? Any other discussion points or questions? All right.
Steve, why don't you tell them all the things we did here to improve this building?
I'm not sure I could say all of it, but can you help
Well,
us?
heating and air conditioning, all new painting, all new flooring, taking out, removing science, equipment in
We
one
cut a
room.
wall, cut a hole in the wall.
We had a hole in the wall to make two rooms.
To expand the room next door. So we now have.
It was a huge project.
Yeah, it was a huge project. There is now an office space where the director can work, and there's a place where people can work on collections and do things. Mariam has an office space there. Then we have 2 rooms for, and we'll let people look around. We're going to open it up so you can look in and see what's there. It's still under construction, but you're right, Nancy, to point out that it was a huge process. And John Sales really led it and did a great job.
You mentioned the large artifacts and our buggy from the
There it is. Okay. Anything else?
How long do you have the space for?
Oh, that's a good question. We have 5 years. We have, I believe it's 5-year lease, and we're looking at how we can renew it. It's already been at least a year working on the space, so we're in the process of discussion about renewing it and how we can renew it, but we have 5 years. Other good questions? All right. Well, thank you all for coming. It's great to see you out here. I really don't want to take all those cookies home, so please have yourself the cookies and bananas. And now I'm going to turn over to Kathleen.
So picture what your elementary school looked like when you were a little kid. These dingy halls, kind of grungy desks sitting all over the place. just that smell of elementary school. That's what we had when we rented these 5 rooms, and it kind of brought back this feeling. You know, when you walked in there, you thought, do I want to be here? You know, because it had been kind of closed up for a while. But I think the team that got this thing going, and just, you know, the new paint, the great colors, the window treatments, the lighting, the electrical, all the stuff Steve mentioned, is just, you know, really exciting. And, you know, the next step is to, you know, get the collection really curated so that we can really educate the people that come here to visit with us. So we're really thrilled with this first inaugural meeting here. You're the first guys that have come in here from outside, so welcome. So it's my pleasure to introduce our featured speaker of the night, Ms. Mariam Hansen. Mariam is the research director of the Historical Society, and in that role as research director, she's responsible for the research activities that really support the heart and soul of the St. Helena Historical Society, which is specifically to preserve, exhibit, interpret, and provide access to the history of the St. Helena area to the surrounding community. Mariam was born and raised in St. Helena, which I think is amazing, having come from elsewhere myself, and is an expert in the history of this area. She was actively involved in the founding of the Historical Society. She served as a volunteer with the Historical Society for 19 years and has also served as a past president of the board. The title of her talk tonight is A Journey Through Time, which is going to be a historical journey through time in St. Helena through videos. Many of those are vintage videos. Photos, sorry, of the St. Helena area and the people, you know, who have been living here. And she's going to start with the Native American settlers in the area. And there's going to be Q&A. You want to do Q&A at the end or during? At the end. So hold your questions to the end. And so, Mariam, the floor is yours. Thank you. Thanks. Okay.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be presenting our first lecture in our new lecture room here. We hope to have many lectures here, as well as school classes and other presentations. We've already had a book club in here, so it's a great moment here. So we're going to go on a quick journey through St. Helena history, a journey through time. And we're going to start with our local Native Americans. Here's a map of the groups that lived in this area. And you can see St. Helena is over here. The Wapo, our group that was here, were so named by Spaniards as Wapo, or brave. But they are a Yuki ethnic group. It is estimated that in 1835, there were about 5,000 Wapo people in the valley. This map was drawn by famed anthropologist Alfred Kroger. The Wapo village was located at the confluence of the Napa River and Sulphur Creek in St. Helena. The tribe called it Anakota Noma. Noma means village, as in Sonoma, and nearby in England was Timanoma. These are two of the rare images of Wapo people. At left is a woman who lived on Spring Mountain at the McCormick Ranch. And at right is a photo by I.C. Adams of a woman who probably lived near Calistoga. Many Wapos found work on white ranches as vaqueros or household help. Sadly, due to disease and displacement of their way of life, the Wapo people slowly disappeared in Napa Valley, though there are living Wapo still in other areas. George John, the first white settler in Napa County at Rancho Camus. In 1794, George John was born to a Pennsylvania Dutch family, the sixth child of his parents. He could not read or write English, but understood French and German. Yount left his wife Eliza and children, Francis and Robert, to make his fortune. After wandering the West, Yount arrived in Sonoma and went to work for General Vallejo and the Mission Fathers. He impressed them with his carpentry skills. When friends arrived in the Napa Valley in 1842, Yount learned that he had a daughter that he did not know about, Elizabeth Ann Yount. His wife Eliza divorced him in 1829 for desertion. Yount wanted all his children to come to the Napa Valley, and they did, Francis, Robert, and Elizabeth. And he was the grantee of Rancho Camus. This is a map of Rancho Carne Humana. This is a map was drawn by the Mexican authorities at the time that the land grant was given. It looks from west to east. And cerros in Spanish is hills. And you can see his house on Whitehall Lane was the Casa del Rancho, right there. So we're looking towards Sonoma, and up there is the Cerros de Sonoma. So the other side would be Sonoma, and this is also Cerros here and here, and oak trees in the valley floor. So the Europeans began to arrive, and here's Dr. Edward Turner Bale, the grantee of Rancho Carne Humana. Dr. Bale converted to Catholicism and married Maria Soberanes, a niece of General Vallejo, in 1839. In 1841, Dr. Bale obtained a Mexican land grant, which he named Rancho Carne Humana, which actually means human flesh, but we think that it's a play on the word Cala Humana, which is the name of Native American group. He built an adobe home on today's Whitehall Lane. In 1846, he built the Bale Grist Mill. He died in 1849 from an illness thought to be stomach cancer at the age of 38, leaving a wife and 6 children. And here's his wife, Maria Soberanes de Bale. Maria Soberanes was the niece of General Vallejo. The couple had 6 children, one of whom married Charles Krug. Maria sold land to support her family. In 1854, she sold 126 acres to Henry Still and Charles Walters, which became the nucleus of downtown St. Helena. She died in 1901. So, Charles Krug married Carolina Bale. Charles Krug came from Germany. In 1858, he made the first commercial wine in Napa County, in Napa, for John Patchett. In late 1860, he married Carolina Bale, who came with 540 acres of land for her dowry. And today, Charles Krug Winery is on this land. Amongst the first settlers were David and William Hudson. In 1845, David and William Hudson crossed the plains with the Grigsby-eyed party. David first owned what is now Beringer, and his house, much remodeled and moved, is still there. William owned from Hudson Avenue to the Ridgetop and Silver Creek to Madrona Avenue. His family donated the land to start the cemetery, and his wife was the first person buried there. David moved away to Lake County. Joining the Hudsons on the trek across the plains were the Yorks, John York and Lucinda Hudson York. And yes, she was William Hudson's sister. John York's great-grandfather, Seymour York, was a British loyalist in the American Revolution in North Carolina. He served as a captain and was jailed by the U.S. after the war. John York married Lucinda Hudson and crossed the plains with the Grigsby-eyed party, arriving in 1845. The York land was north of Madrona Avenue, west of Main Street to the ridge top, and south of York Creek, which was originally called Hudson's Creek, and comprised 300 acres. Dean York Lane is named for their son, William Enoch Dean York, and present-day John York still lives on the family land. Did I get that right, John?
Yep.
And here we have the Hudson-McCormick family on Spring Mountain. And we have their buggy here. The Hudson, McCormick, and York families arrived in Napa Valley in 1845, and there were not many suitable spouses at the time, and the families intermarried. Molly Hudson married Henry McCormick. Molly was widowed in 1879 with 5 children. She is the lady on the horse with a child in front of her. Molly kept the family ranch at the top of Spring Mountain. Her son John is leaning on the horse at left and raised sheep. And John's daughter was Edna Babe McCormick Learned. And we have some of her family here today. She married us with us. I didn't know. Here's the old Masonic Lodge in the 1870s. Dean Carver built this one-story brick building in 1880. It housed the Carver and Phillips store, where you could buy the San Francisco Chronicle and the post office. Carver later added the second floor for the Masonic Lodge to meet, and you can see their symbols on the front of the second floor. This is the building that houses the Christopher Hill Gallery now, and I think it's vacant below. Here is St. Louis Chinatown at Main and West Charter Oak. St. Louis was home to about 400 to 600 Chinese people in the 1870s and 1880s. At a time when few people lived here, rapid vineyard and winery development was underway. Large crews of manual laborers were hard to find, so Chinese labor contractors brought in workers to clear rocks, cut trees, excavate tunnels, and other hard work. Chinese men preferred their own foods and kept to their small enclave on West Charter Oak Avenue. Chinatown eventually burned down due to a series of accidental fires, and the last of it burned down in 1911. The prune dryer was later built on that spot at the corner of West Charter Oak and Main. Here we have a few photos of some Chinese St. Helena residents. In the upper left corner, we have a railroad worker. In the middle is Young Ten, who was the Gluius family cook. The upper right corner is a portrait taken in St. Helena. It says on the picture, but we don't know who that is. And the lower left corner is Ah Hing, who was the Lyman family cook. Here's Vineland School-built in 1870. Vineland School was located south of Center Winery on Highway 29. Was later Milani's Trailer Park, and is now vacant. It was the first concrete structure in Napa County. Land was donated by John Llewellyn. We also have a family member here. The school was converted to a home when Hall Winery bought the property, demolished the structure, and cleared out the trailer park. Here's the second grammar school. The first grammar school was located south of Beringer, where Las Alcobas Hotel is now, on land that was donated by John York. About 1858, the building was moved to Adams Street, west of Oak, and here the students are posing in front of the school before 1900. The building was replaced in 1901 with a 2-story stone building. That building was deemed not earthquake safe, demolished, and replaced with the present building in 1933. Here's a parade on July 4th, 1885. Over 400 onlookers enjoyed the parade. The fire department took charge of the celebration. Their tent was named Fireman's Delight, where an unlimited supply of Napa Valley wines were served. This was taken from the balcony of the Windsor Hotel, now the Hotel Helena, which doesn't exist anymore. It was torn down when it became unsafe. Here's another parade on Main Street in 1900. Photographers loved to use the balcony of the Hotel Helena to capture parade scenes on Main Street. Here the girl students from all the schools show off their white dresses. Here's Beringer brothers in front of their winery in 1895. Jacob and Frederick Beringer were from a German winemaking family. In 1875, Jacob bought 210 acres and Beringer Winery was born. Jacob was the winemaker and Frederick was the financier. In 1877, the cornerstone for the winery was laid. Here the brothers posed with family members and their employees in 1895. And you can see them there right in the middle. This is the Weinberger Winery, established 1876. John Weinberger came from Germany and bought land from Charles Krug and Eli York in 1870. John began making wine in 1874, and in 1876 he built his winery. His career was not to last long, as in 1882 he was murdered by a disgruntled employee at Lodi train station. His wife Hannah continued to operate the winery until Prohibition in 1920. Today, this is the William Coble Winery, owned by Bill and Jane Valentine. And here we have the Cordy family of Ayler's Lane. Clemens and Bernard Cordy came from Germany around 1890, and Clemens lived along Ayler's Lane. He and wife Anna had 7 children. They grew grapes, wheat, apples, and crushed their grapes into wine. Clemens died in 1933, but his family still owns the ranch. Engelnook Chateau Winery was completed in 1887. Gustav Niebaum was an early advocate of meticulous cleanliness in his winery and insisted on using only the best fruit. His great-nephew, John Daniel Jr., continued his reputation for quality, and today the winery is owned by the Coppola family. Here the Haus Family is hauling grapes in Pope Valley. In the early 1870s, 3 Swiss brothers arrived from the land of opportunity to seek their fortune: Henry, Ed, and Otto Haus. They established a winery in Pope Valley, which was managed by Ed Haus. Henry Haus founded the blacksmith shop, which is still there in downtown Pope Valley. It's owned by the Napa County Historical Society, who has it open on special days. All of his tools are still in there. Here's Harvey Llewellyn at the left with Nelsie Peterson on Shacks Lane in 1892. John Llewellyn came to St. Helena in 1865, planting 100 acres to grapes and land on Shacks Lane to wheat. And here's son Harvey on the left is standing next to the hay baler, driven by Nelsie Peterson. And here's the Lemme family on Spring Mountain. They're relaxing on their porch at La Perla Vineyard on Spring Mountain Road. The land was later owned by Jerome Draper and is now part of Spring Mountain Winery. Their house was moved down the mountain to Silver Springs Avenue, just west of Main Street. In 1968, the St. Helena Fire Department burned it down for a training exercise. The man in the middle, the gray-haired man sitting on the steps with a cane, that's Charles Lemme, and above him on the porch is his son, Rudolph Lemme. Became a very famous winemaker. The circus came to town in 1900. The Leon brothers circus came to town in September 1900. And here the elephants are walking down Hunt Street after the parade on Main Street. Locals noticed the horses were tired from hard travel and the wagons needed paint. But Leon Brothers Circus was enjoyed by everyone. And here we have the electric train, the interurban line, circa 1912. The San Francisco, Vallejo, and Napa Valley Railroad started service to town in 1908. A large banquet was held to celebrate the new train service. By 1933, people were using automobiles and buses, and the train stopped service. Most of the tracks were torn up in 1942 during a wartime scrap metal drive. This photo was made from a glass plate negative that was damaged there on the left, but it's still a great image. You can see the car of the electric railroad there right in the middle. These are the high school students at Turner Hall in Lyman Park. From 1897 to 1912, St. Helena High School met in the German sports club's Turnverein Hall, which is now Lyman Park. The new stone high school building opened in 1912 and replaced this one. Turnverein Hall was demolished in 1924 to make room for the new Lyman Park, so named for the family that donated the land. And here we have the St. Helena Star newspaper print shop. Our local newspaper, which began printing in 1874, was produced entirely in town until the 1980s. And the workers in the shop on the lower picture are Augustina Pozzetti, Louise Kludescheit, and Edwin Paulson. Here's Inez Forney-Supple. She was the daughter of Antonio and Mariana Forney, and the Vintage Festival Queen of 1912. She married Bart Supple of San Francisco, but kept the Forney home at the corner of Madrona and Oak Avenue, which is still there. It's being renovated right now. Here's the 1913 Vintage Festival Parade. Another big success was the 1913 Vintage Festival on Mission Day, September 9th. This entry won the first prize. The queen was Montana Bowler, daughter of the Hotel St. Helena owners. And in 1914, another vintage festival. Here's the queen, Lily Paulson, lined up on Madrona Avenue for the parade, the 1914 Vintage Festival. The first Vintage Festival was designed to bring tourists to St. Helena in 1912. A vintage allegory play debuted in 1914 with actors playing grapevines who fought with the evil Loxra. And the day was saved by the resistant vine. And you'll be able to see a really large picture of the players in this allegory as you walk into the museum, right there on your left. It was quite the event, art play. And here are the theater patrons coming out of the theater around 1915. The theater building was built in 1913 to house the G&G, or Goodman and Galuski Theater. In 1916, it became the Liberty. 1939, the Roxy. 1976, the Liberty. In 1997, the Cameo. The same family owns the building as built it. It was built by Fred Mooney and Lydia. Fred Money and his granddaughter, Lydia Money, still owns the building. And here's the Rutherford School in 1915, and that's Julius Cayoga over there by the flagpole. Rutherford School opened in 1888. In 1951, the school was closed and students were bused to St. Helena. Julius Cayoga became a Napa County supervisor, but he also had a grocery store at one point, and you're going to be able to see his wooden sign in our museum when you go in there. The school building is now the home of the St. Helena Cooperative Nursery School. And here is our Carnegie Library, circa 1920. Most of the funds to build the library came from Andrew Carnegie. On November 1st, 1908, the building opened, and Miss Sophie Zierngibel was the librarian. The top floor was the meeting room for the Women's Improvement Club. Later, the ladies were booted out, and the top floor became the children's library. Here's the high school basketball team, 1920. We have their names left to right. Clifford Cornwell, Louis Paulson, Ellery Murray, James McGinn, and Everett June. And here is the girls' basketball team, 1924. Left to right, Sophie Vautier, Burnell Palmer, Beryl Daniel, Phoebe Tidmarch, and one is unknown on the right. These self-confident young fellows are Lewis Clark, Lionel Blake, and Leo and Frank Harrison in 1924. These guys are on their way to a citizens military training camp located on the Hotel Del Monte property in Monterey during the summers of 1922 to 25. The camp was one of 25 established in the United States for the welfare and security of the country and as a support to its military policy. And you can see they marked on their car that they're going to Del Monte. You can see it on the hood there, just barely. They're very proud to go there. This is Smith's Pharmacy, which today the building is Market Restaurant. The pharmacy that became Smith's was founded in 1874 by H.R. Busenius. W.H. Smith bought the pharmacy from Mr. Davidson in 1895. Walter Metzner came to work as a pharmacist, and that's him on the right. He married the boss's daughter, Susan Smith, and the business became Smith and Metzner in 1897. And later the Metzner part was dropped. So Smith's Pharmacy is still with us today and owned by Jeff and Debbie Hansen. This was our City Hall, 1891 to 1954. Home of the city offices, the council chambers, the police, and fire departments. The building was already old when it was moved here from Church Street. And they say that when they held meetings upstairs and people moved around a lot, the whole building would sway. And they were very panic-stricken about keeping the fire trucks in there because if the building burned down, there would be no fire trucks. So St. Helena Fathers took the low bid and built the present City Hall building. And it was fireproof. That's the main thing. So the city government moved north on Main and across the street. In 2019, the tired building was damaged beyond repair and the city staff moved out. And this old building you see here was eventually demolished. However, on the roof up there is the fire bell. And the fire bell is on its special platform in front of the firehouse to this day. So if you're walking by there, you can go by and see the same fire bell. And here's the parade on Main Street in 1933. The Catholic Young Men's and Ladies Institutes from around the North Bay came to town for a demonstration of their marching skills on May 21st, 1933. This picture is also interesting for the buildings on Main Street and the signs up there. The big building almost to the complete right with the awning there, that's Goodman's. And I believe it's this sweet shop would be to the right of there. Ice cream place. Well, the kids knew where it was. And here is the Vintage Festival Parade of 1934, celebrating the end of Prohibition, which ended in December of 1933. Was the fall 1934 St. Helena Vintage Festival Parade. The parade goers on are on Main Street between Madrona and Pine, and they're watching the 2030 Club entry in the parade, which won the first prize. And you can see those matching two homes there in the background, which still exist in that block of Main Street. And here was a celebration, Mexican Independence Day, 1944. Due to a labor shortage during World War II, the U.S. made a deal with Mexico to import laborers in what is known as the Bracero program. The first bus with workers arrived in Napa County in May of 1943. Most of the 700 Mexican workers in the Napa Valley attended a big Mexican Independence Day celebration at the Native Sons Hall with a grateful community. After the presentations and musical numbers ended, dancing continued into the night. In the front row is Joyce Junie, Helen DePhilippis, Charlotte Tilton, later Charlotte Savage, Anita Bossetti, and Aurelie Fontana. Napa County Sheriff's Posse. The Napa County Mounted Sheriff's Posse was founded in 1949 and the equivalent to today's search and rescue. On the left is George Heibel, who's is right over there, and Constable Ralph Cook. The others are unidentified, so if anyone knows who those guys are, let us know. And they're posing in front of the sheriff's car. Lena Lazzari Harrison was born in Milan, Italy in 1875. She came to St. Leo with her parents and helped them run their Roma Hotel, which was until recently Cindy's Backstreet Kitchen. In 1903, she married Wilbur Harrison, building contractor responsible for many homes and businesses in the area. And that earlier picture were her two sons, Leo and Frank. Wilbur's large carpentry workshop was at 1536 Main Street, just north of the Scout Hall, which is now apartments. Edward Starr Baldwin at 18 months, 1901. Starr was born in 1899 in Warren, Illinois, to Lola Mixon and Edward Baldwin. He grew up in Yakima, Washington, and went into the newspaper business. Starr moved to St. Helena when his mother married Frank Magner, editor of the St. Helena Star. And he owned the newspaper. She became the owner after he died, and the editor. And her son, Starr, took over after she died. So he never used Edward as his first name. Everybody knew him as Starr. And no, there's no relation to the name of the newspaper. That was in 1874. Coincidence. And here he is in his office in his later years. Starr Baldwin was present for every community event for over 40 years. He photographed them all and wrote most of the stories. We now have a park on Spring Street that's named for him. Police Chief Cheney Johnson in his new uniform. Cheney Johnson served the town for 46 years and became police chief. He lived on Main Street north of Madrona in what is now the Kilparis home and died in 1953. I sneaked this one in. These are my parents. Rudy and Nina met in Germany after World War II. They bought Ray Corbell's property on Silverado Trail in 1954, which had been a slaughterhouse for his St. North. And they converted it into a family home, which wasn't easy. So that's my parents right when they got their start here in Napa Valley.
What was your mom's maiden name?
Fink.
Fink?
F-I-N-K. Fink. She had to spell Venetian the rest of her life. And here is the United Ancient Order of Druids. St. Helena Grove number 41 was founded in 1885 and first met over what is now Bastone's, or until recently, was Bastone's Pharmacy. Their guiding virtues were justice, morality, and brotherly love. The ladies' sisterhood was Olive Circle number 8. And this photo was taken around 1960. And we don't have a lot of IDs on these fellows either. So anybody want to help us out there, that would be great. All these men were born in 1894, and they all served in World War I. They met every year to celebrate with dinner and dancing. This photo is circa 1950. So the man on the far right is John Salstrom, whose son Ed is with us today.
Not many Italians, huh?
So in 1957, they changed from Vintage Festival to Harvest Festival, and these are some pictures from the 1957 Harvest Festival parade. And we have the old cars and some funny floats, and looks like a Navy band up right left there. In 1959, Pollyanna was filmed around St. Helena. In August 1959, Walt Disney Studios came to town to film the movie starring Haley Mills, Jane Wyman, and Richard Egan. And here Haley poses with one of the other actresses. The filming took place at Sulphur Creek on Main, the train station, Bale Mill, Stag's Leap Manor House, and Zinfandel Bridge. And the movie was released in 1960. And here are some filming scenes, and we have some locals that were in the movie. In the top left, we have Ken and Alice Taplin with their son, with their daughter Melinda, and their son Steve.
Sailor Steve.
In the middle is Kevin Corcoran, who played in the movie. And on the right, there's a scene at the railroad station with Haley Mills. And in the lower right is a photo with the local ladies who were in the movie. Alice Taplin, Susan Mulligan, Edna Warnock, Janice White, and with Ken Taplin, who had charge of all the old cars. Then, right after that, Elvis came to town. And the girls went wild. Elvis, Tuesday Weld, and Hope Lang and Movie Company came to town to film Wild in the Country in November of 1960. And there's fans begging for autographs. Here Elvis is at the Napa River on Big Tree Road, signing autographs for two fans. A movie company of 80 people came for 2 months of filming. Elvis stayed in Napa until the girls find out where he was. Later, he was moved to the Ink House, which also appears in the movie. And this scene is at the Napa River on the end of Big Tree Road. And that's the end of our talk. Thank you for listening. I'll take any questions. Anybody else? I covered it so well.
Yes, we did.
All right.
Thank you, Mary.